My name is Nicholas Christian, and I will be presenting an analysis that I've done of Montreal 311 service requests. So, the City of Montreal receives many requests for information and services. Like, for example, if you call 311 right now on your cell phone, you'll get someone from the city, and you can ask them for information about your tax bill, or you can ask them to fix the pothole in front of your house. If you make a service request, this information is recorded into a database called Gestion de Demande Client. In last year, the Montreal Gazette requested access to this database, and they received a dump of 1.3 million call records covering the period from 2008 to 2012. And I helped the Gazette to analyze this data set. So now that the articles have been published on the Gazette website, I can kind of present my analysis of the data. So I basically loaded up this data set into an interactive pivot table, and I'm going to kind of walk you through a high-level analysis of the data, and then show you how to kind of drill down into the data to find some interesting patterns. So if you can't see this, it basically says here there's just the number of requests, and it's 1.2 million requests. So let's make a little bar graph out of that. There you go, 1.2 million requests. So the city of Montreal is divided into 19 administrative regions called boroughs. So we can split up the requests by borough. So here I have the 19 different boroughs of the island of Montreal, and they're organized by population from left to right. So the bigger boroughs are over there, with Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce being the biggest borough, and the smallest one, Île-Bizarre, Sainte-Geneviève, over here on the right. What I see when I look at this graph is kind of interesting, is that the borough with the largest number of requests is not the biggest borough. It's Saint-Laurent, which is only the 8th biggest borough. So this is something interesting that I'll drill into in a minute. Beyond looking at the requests over space, we can look at them by category. So the original 1-point-something million requests, all that we had to describe them was a short text string. There was about 5,000 different unique values of these text strings. And the work that I did was basically to categorize it into 18 different categories. I don't have time to explain how I did that right now. It's all on my blog, and I'll put the link back up afterwards. But basically the categories, by far the dominant category was waste collection. It was so dominant that it was broken up into 3 subcategories, which show up, where are they? Here, here, and here. So selective collection is basically the biggest category, and is everything to do with recycling or tree branches or green waste or any kind of waste that's not part of your normal garbage stream. That's basically the largest source of requests, followed by roads. Within roads, potholes are not actually the biggest category. The biggest category was other. Garbage collection comes to third. That's basically requests around, oh, my garbage wasn't picked up, or my neighbor's garbage wasn't picked up. And the third garbage category is bulky items. So if you dump a mattress on the side of the road and the city doesn't pick it up, you can call and ask them to pick it up. And the other categories are basically, they essentially just cover all the services that the city offers. People call and make service requests basically in the categories of services that the city offers. So water, taxes, parking, lighting, signage, and that sort of thing. So let's take a look at these requests by borough and category. So we can do that like this. It's not particularly easy to see. So I'm going to make what's called a heat map. So here I basically have a table. It's a little messy, but I basically got a table with the boroughs down the side, and the categories down the top. So if everything was sort of nicely distributed, you'd basically you'd see this gradient down this way and across this way as the bigger cells are more red. Anytime you see a hotspot like here or here or here, it's basically boroughs or borough category intersections that don't really follow the overall pattern. Thank you. So here the biggest, the spot that lights up the most here is the bulky collection category in Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles. Huge category compared to all of the others. You also see a few different categories lighting up for the Saint-Laurent borough here: security, other, selective collection. And if I scroll down and over, there's a couple other little hotspots here around taxes in Saint-Léonard and La Salle. So this is kind of a little bit of a high-level pattern. I'll be coming back to some of these in a minute. Beyond looking at these requests in category and space, we can look at them over time. So let's take a look at that. If I take a look at requests over time, I can make a heat map with the years across the side here and the categories in the rows, and it renders okay on the screen. You can see some interesting hotspots, right? You can see that selective collection jumps up in 2012, conversely, bulky collection seems to be much higher in 2008 than in the other years. Parking and security seem to be high in 2008, 2009, and low in 2011, 2012. And snow looks like a big deal in 2008. So a different way to look at that is, of course, as a line chart, because it's over time. And here you see the same patterns, right? You see, parking and security being high and dropping, bulky collection, selective collection jumping up here, and snow being higher in 2008. So snow being higher in 2008 is not that surprising. 2008 was a much higher snow year than 2009, 10, 11, or 12. So we're looking at the right thing here. I can do the same analysis across months rather than years. And here you see, again, snow kind of stands out. It's big in January, February, March, and spikes back up in December. There are also some interesting spikes. For example, here, environment spikes in May. Not quite clear why. This little spike here is taxes. Taxes spike in February. People might not be super surprised about why taxes spike in February. So I know I'm talking really fast here, but I've listed a few different categories and boroughs which are of specific interest because they don't seem to follow the overall pattern. So let's drill into some of those. So if I look specifically at requests throughout the entire period, and I choose to focus specifically on the category which was the most anomalous looking, bulky collection, and I break it out by borough, and I look at all requests, I see that this category is totally dominated by this blue line here. This blue line here is Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles. So the fact that Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles showed up so strongly on our heat map is a pattern that's kind of borne out throughout the 5-year period, except that some of the other boroughs like Sud-Ouest and Ahuntsic and Plateau-Mont-Royal were bigger in 2008. So what explains this? Well, the nice thing about working with a journalist on this stuff is that he actually goes and does reporting. So the journalist from the Gazette that I worked with, Roberto Roca, actually called up the city and found out that for bulky collection, in some boroughs you actually have to call the city and ask them to pick up your mattress or refrigerator or whatever it is that you put on the side of the road. Specifically in Rivière-des-Prairies, Pointe-aux-Trembles, they won't pick up anything unless you call them. So that's why you get some boroughs have many more requests in this category than others. My suspicion about this spike in 2008 is that basically certain boroughs changed their policy. For example, where we live, you don't actually need to call ahead. There's certain days where you can, where they will pick up bulky things. If you drill down and look at these little purple bumps down here in Lachine, you can see that there's a very repetitive pattern in September and May, September and May, September and May. Clearly this borough has a slightly different policy about picking up bulky items. Maybe they only pick up in September and May, and people call when their thing wasn't picked up as they were expected or something like that. So by looking at specifically a category, we can pick up some interesting patterns. So another category which jumped up was security. If I look at security-related requests, I don't know about you guys, but I see a pattern. This green line here is the borough of Saint-Laurent. So when we were looking at the year-by-year evolution of this category, we saw that it was really big in 2008, 2009, and really small 2010, 2011. That entire change comes from requests from Saint-Laurent. So our intrepid journalist went and asked the city why this is, and it turns out that in Saint-Laurent they have a private security force. And that private security force uses the 311 system to record their interventions or observations. Now, all of these requests in 2008, 2009 came from a single address, which was a park. They weren't able to tell us exactly why, but maybe it's kids smoking pot or people looking sketchy or something in that park. And it looks like either they stopped recording these incidents or something changed. And essentially, at a very specific point, right here in April 2010, they stopped recording this kind of call. If you look much more closely, you see a bit of a cyclical pattern in this blue line. So if I turn off Saint-Laurent, I see a much more strong cyclical pattern. This is Ile-Bizarre-Sainte-Geneviève, which also showed up on our overall heat map. And they have a big spike every summer, in June, in July, August, in July, August. So they get a bunch of security-related calls every summer, and it accounts for a large fraction of the requests that they get. So that one we don't have a specific explanation for, but clearly there's something going on that might be worth investigating. So I'll go through one last category, which is taxes. Here, there's kind of an interesting pattern. You see that almost every borough has a spike in February, except for 3 of them. And these 3 are, you might have guessed it, Saint-Laurent, fairly different from all the other boroughs, as well as La Salle and Saint-Léonard. So, basically these boroughs have a different way of dealing with their taxes, and they have their own special little description related to requests that come up in March and sort of tail off in April, May, June, which is fairly different from all the other boroughs, which basically get one big spike in February and that's it. So there's lots of other patterns to dig into. I've covered a whole bunch of them in my analysis here on my blog. I'm out of time. I've graciously been given 10 minutes. I'm already over. But some sort of quick conclusions to tie this off. So first of all, using an interactive pivot table is a pretty good way of getting some high-level insight and then drilling down into specific patterns. Secondly, overall, I would say that the requests that are captured by the Gestion de Demande Client system basically reflect the services that the City of Montreal offers, and generally, the things that people complain about. They complain about garbage. At certain seasons, they complain about certain things. They complain about snow in the winter. They make service requests about the environment in the spring. But this categorization scheme, I had to basically sit down and use some programming skills to pull together these 1.2 million requests into 18 categories. It would be nice if the city actually, categorized these things a bit more systematically. It would also be nice if the city used an Open 311 system, which is an open source system that would allow citizens to sort of check in on their own requests or see if other people have made requests, or maybe all of these graphs could be publicly available in real time for everybody. So those are basically my conclusions. And if you're curious about the tool that I was using for this demonstration, it's also on my website. I built it. It's called pivottable.js, and it's a really neat way of exploring data.